I think I saw a skinwalker. It was a cloudy night, and I couldn't see the full moon. It started with a large dog. It was black and looked like a German shepherd. It ran around my yard, and I went to the side of the house to see it. It was standing outside my window looking like a werewolf. It was hunched over. I thought it was a joke. I stared at it for a moment, waiting for some kind of punchline, for someone to jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" But the seconds stretched into a minute, and then another, and no one came. The creature didn't move either. It just stood there, its eyes glowing with an unnatural yellow light, its body hunched in a way that no dog should be able to manage. I finally snapped out of my stupor and backed away from the window, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached for my phone, thinking to call the authorities, but then I thought better of it. What would I tell them? That there was a werewolf in my yard? In a daze, I made my way to my basement, where I kept a shotgun. I didn't know if it would do any good, but I felt better having it. As I loaded the gun, I tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe it was a large dog. Maybe it was sick or injured, causing it to contort its body in that disturbing way. But when I made my way back upstairs and peeked out the window, the creature was no longer in the same spot. Instead, it was standing upright, its body elongated and muscular, its head more wolf than dog. Its eyes were still on my house, on me. A chill ran down my spine. This was no dog. This was something else entirely. A skinwalker, a creature from the stories my grandmother used to tell me, a shapeshifter from Native American lore. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't just stand there. So I did the only thing I could think of. I turned off all the lights in the house, hoping that the creature would lose interest and leave. I spent a sleepless night in my living room, the shotgun never leaving my side. When the dawn finally broke, I cautiously looked out the window. The creature was gone. In the following days, I would install better security around my house, including brighter lights and a sturdy fence. I never saw the creature again, but the memory of that night lingers. Every time I look out into my yard, I half expect to see those glowing yellow eyes staring back at me. But all I see is my ordinary backyard, a stark contrast to the terror I felt that night. It was in late October 2014 when I was up at my family's cabin in the mountains of western North Carolina. The night was very clear, very cold, and very quiet. It was well after dark, and my uncle and I were sitting on the back porch smoking cigars and having a couple of beers. The cabin was pretty remote and sat on a heavily wooded mountainside, but there were a few houses scattered around the area, and occasionally you would hear a passing car. The porch and backyard were pretty large, and you could see a good distance in all directions. I remember looking off into the distance at a small open field and seeing what I thought was a deer about 80 yards away. The light was dim, but it was still noticeable enough. I said something to my uncle about it, and we watched it for a few minutes. About 15 minutes later, I decided to go inside and grab a drink. As I came back out, I noticed that it was still there, but that it was much closer now, probably 50 yards away. I was a little concerned about it because it wasn't moving. I told my uncle about it, and we both watched it for a few minutes. We thought it was a little odd that it wasn't moving, but decided not to worry too much about it. We continued our conversation, occasionally glancing over at the still figure. As the night wore on, the temperature began to drop, and the wind picked up, rustling the leaves and branches around us. The figure in the distance seemed to be getting even closer, now about 30 yards away. This time, however, we noticed something different about it. The silhouette seemed too tall and broad to be a deer, and it appeared to be standing on two legs. We exchanged uneasy glances and whispered about what it could be. We considered the possibility of a person or a large bear, but neither explanation seemed to fit the situation. The curiosity and unease grew within us, and we decided it was time to investigate. Armed with flashlights and a sense of caution, we slowly approached the figure. As we closed the distance, the light from our flashlights began to reveal more details. It was not a bear or a person, but something else entirely. It was a creature we had never seen before, covered in thick fur and standing at least 7 feet tall, with piercing eyes and a hunched posture. Our hearts raced as we realized we were looking at a creature straight out of local legends, a Bigfoot. It stared back at us, its eyes reflecting the light from our flashlights, seemingly as curious about us as we were about it. Before we could react or decide on our next move, the creature turned and disappeared into the dense forest, leaving us with an incredible story to tell. We returned to the cabin, our minds racing with excitement and disbelief. We debated whether to share our encounter with others, knowing that many would be skeptical. In the end, we decided to keep our story within the family, sharing it only with those we knew would believe us. The experience brought my uncle and me closer, giving us a unique bond that we would cherish for the rest of our lives. Every time I return to that cabin, I find myself scanning the woods, hoping for another glimpse of the mysterious creature we encountered that night. The memory of that cold October evening remains vivid in my mind, a reminder that there are still undiscovered wonders hidden in the mountains of western North Carolina. My name is Jake, and I live in a small town in the Pacific Northwest. I am a member of the 3 affiliated tribes of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. I am also part Irish, German, and French. I have always believed in Sasquatch or Bigfoot. I have even had a sighting of him in 2010, but I never bothered to report it. Then, on October 24th, 2018, I had another sighting. I live out in the middle of nowhere on a small farm surrounded by dense forest. I just finished a long day of work and decided to take a walk along the tree line as the sun was setting. I was about a half-mile from my house when I heard a strange noise from the dense underbrush. It was a low, guttural growl, the kind that raises the hairs on the back of your neck. I stopped in my tracks, listening intently. The noise was followed by a large rustling sound, as if something massive was moving through the underbrush. I had a small flashlight with me, and I cautiously pointed it toward the source of the noise. What I saw next took my breath away. There, illuminated by the beam of my flashlight, stood a massive creature covered in thick, matted hair. It must have been at least 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a powerful build. Its eyes reflected the light from my flashlight, giving off an eerie glow. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew instantly what I was looking at. A Sasquatch, just like the one I'd seen 8 years ago. Despite my initial fear, I felt a strange sense of awe and respect for the creature. It stared back at me, seemingly unafraid, before it turned and disappeared into the forest. I rushed back to my house, my mind racing. I knew I needed to document what I had seen, but I also knew that few would believe me. I decided to keep the encounter to myself, not wanting to face the skepticism and doubt that would surely follow. Over the next few weeks, I kept a close watch on the area where I'd seen the Sasquatch. I even set up a trail camera in hopes of capturing evidence of its existence. But despite my efforts, the creature remained elusive. I never saw it again, but I often found large, unusual footprints in the ground and heard strange noises in the forest at night. My encounters with Sasquatch have deepened my connection to my Native American heritage. They have reminded me of the many stories and legends passed down through the generations, stories of powerful and mysterious creatures that dwell in the forests and mountains. I now see my home and the surrounding wilderness with new eyes, knowing that there are beings out there that we do not fully understand. The Pacific Northwest is a place of great beauty and mystery, and I am grateful for the chance to live here and to experience its wonders firsthand. I will continue to respect and protect this land and the incredible creatures that call it home. I live on a farm in a rural area of Illinois. It's a pretty big place, so we have a lot of land that's not being used for anything. It's a great place to go for walks. It was about a month ago, and I was out walking the perimeter of the property. I usually go out and walk every morning, and there's a trail I like to follow that goes by the trees and into one of the fields. I was out there because I wanted to see if there were any rabbits in the area. I was hoping I could get my dogs interested in hunting, but they weren't getting it, so I wanted to figure out a way to trick them into doing it. I was in the field, and I had my eye on a rabbit that was on the other side of the tree. I was trying to sneak up on it, and I was successful. I got really close to it, and I was just about to step on it when I heard a weird noise. It sounded like a growl, but it was deeper and more resonant than any animal I'd ever heard. The rabbit bolted, and I quickly stood upright, my heart pounding. The sound had come from the edge of the forest, a good distance away from me, but close enough to send a chill down my spine. I scanned the tree line, squinting against the early morning light. Then I saw it. A large, hulking figure was standing just within the shadow of the trees. At first I thought it might be a bear, but as my eyes adjusted, I could tell it was standing on two legs. Its eyes seemed to glint in the light, and it was covered in thick, matted fur. A sense of primal fear gripped me, but also a strange sense of curiosity. I'd heard stories about Bigfoot sightings around the country, but never in Illinois. Yet there I was, staring at a creature that matched those descriptions perfectly. I slowly began to back away, not wanting to provoke the creature. It watched me intently, making no move to either approach or retreat. When I was about halfway back to the farmhouse, I turned and broke into a run. I reached the house out of breath and locked the doors behind me. I spent the rest of the day in a state of disbelief. I told my family about what I had seen, but they dismissed it as a trick of the light or an unusually large bear. However, I knew what I had seen. Over the next few weeks, I researched more about Bigfoot sightings and started to take notes of unusual occurrences around the farm. Things like strange noises at night, unusual tracks in the mud, and a couple of times the dogs barked and whined at the forest line, refusing to go near it. Despite the fear and uncertainty, I also felt a sense of excitement. The world felt a little bit larger, a bit more mysterious. I decided to set up some trail cameras around the farm, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature again. Every morning I would eagerly check the cameras, anticipation bubbling within me. The farm was no longer just a place to live, it had become a realm of discovery and adventure. I didn't know what the future would hold, but one thing was certain: my morning walks would never be the same. Afternoon of Thursday, September 4th, 2014, I was in my truck driving south on the Grand Loop Road in the Shoshone Lake area of the park. I was approximately 2 miles from the Shoshone Lake turnoff at about mile marker 29. Towards the end of the lake, I came across 2 elk walking on the road. I stopped and watched as a large wolf-like animal came out of the forest and chased the elk back into the woods. What struck me as odd, however, was the size of this creature. It was significantly larger than any wolf I had ever seen or studied, standing nearly as tall as a deer at the shoulder. Its muscular frame was evident even from a distance, and its fur was a dark charcoal gray. As I observed it from the safety of my truck, it turned its attention from the fleeing elk and looked directly at me. Its eyes were a striking amber color, filled with an intelligence and intensity that sent chills down my spine. I reached for the radio to report the sighting, but paused, my hand hovering over the device. The wolf, if it was a wolf, didn't exhibit any signs of aggression. It simply watched me, its gaze as curious as mine. For a moment, we held each other's gaze. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the creature turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving me with a sense of wonder and a little trepidation. I grabbed the radio and reported the encounter to the park's headquarters, making sure to note the unusual size and behavior of the animal. Over the next few weeks, I would hear reports from other rangers and even some visitors about sightings of the large wolf-like creature. Some referred to it as a super wolf, while others speculated it could be a wolf-dog hybrid that had somehow found its way into the park. I spent many of my days and nights patrolling the park, hoping to catch another glimpse of the creature. I never did see it again, but the memory of our encounter remained fresh in my mind. It reminded me of the power and mystery of nature, the secrets it still holds, and the respect it commands. In the following years, the story of the Shoshone superwolf would become a bit of a local legend in the park. Visitors would come hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature, and while some claimed to have seen it, no one ever managed to get any definitive evidence.